Namaste, hello, and greetings. My name is Dr. Sushma Taylor. I'm the Executive Director of CenterPoint Incorporated in California, United States. I'm also the President of the World Federation of Therapeutic Communities. My co-facilitator for the training is Mr. Sandeep Verma, the Chief Executive of the program Staying Out in New York. We are delighted to be here in India to provide training for Indian participants at the special request of Dr. Rajesh Kumar, the Executive Director of SPYM. We're really grateful to Dr. Kumar for thinking of us for this training. The World Federation of Therapeutic Communities is a multi-nation member organization. Our members represent treatment and prevention and education programs in over 70 countries. Our members hail from the United States, Canada, Mexico, Latin America, South America, Europe, Asia, Africa, and of course, Australia. Therefore, the continents are well represented. The training modules that we have been privileged to provide have been developed over the course of many decades by many pioneers, researchers, practitioners who have helped to create the evolution of the therapeutic community model that exists today. We in the World Federation of Therapeutic Communities are very passionate about the work that we do, and we believe that the therapeutic community model works really well in many diverse cultures, in diverse geographic regions, and also embraces different socioeconomic groups and also sociocultural groups, and we believe that is really critical to doing the kind of work that we do. And we believe that addiction treatment is work of the heart. So I want to once again thank Dr. Kumar for thinking of us, and also to let everyone know that we are so excited that the World Federation of Therapeutic Communities can partner with an eminent organization such as SPYM. Our training modules have been segregated into two or three different categories. The first category is the history of therapeutic communities, how they evolved, from whence they evolved, and the pioneers that helped shape the therapeutic community methodology. We also have a training module on morning meeting and how to create, to hold, convene, and to facilitate a morning meeting, which is an essential element of therapeutic communities. Another one of our training modules is that of special populations, and in particular, adolescents and young children. We also have a module on the essential elements of therapeutic communities. What are the core programs and interventions that actually create the therapeutic aspect of therapeutic communities? And finally, our last module was the evolution of therapeutic communities from their humble beginnings to their current robust, well-researched, well-documented, and well-practiced modality that it is today. Today, of course, the TC staff include a mix of professionals and experienced recovery staff and other trained professionals. So it's a transdisciplinary staff. I don't say multidisciplinary, I say transdisciplinary, because generally what you want to do, everybody comes in with a particular skill, but you all have a common purpose. Most of the quality therapeutic communities have standards for their programs, standards for the competence of the staff, and have required outside evaluation and outside credentialing bodies to let them know how well they're doing. And that's very important to us. And of course, many of them belong to professional associations. I did mention the Therapeutic Communities of America, Treatment Communities America, and also the World Federation of Therapeutic Communities, and we're members of both associations. There are about 14 basic program components in a TC, and obviously they have been adapted to, it'll work now? Adapted to many different settings and different populations. So SEEP is going to help me go through the list of the basic components. We talked about community separateness. Okay, by this we mean, remember we had a question that was asked, can this be done within a hospital? Well, not really, not if the mission of the hospital is to do something else. The mission of the setting must be that of recovery or lifestyle behavioral change. So everybody should be involved in it, which is why we say separate and apart. Do not be a small cog in a larger wheel that just gets run over. So separateness is important.
That's also to say if you have a TC program within a jail, which we mentioned as a distinct possibility for this model, it's widely used in the United States to use with inside of jail and prison institutions, that you could have a standalone either a building or a ward or a floor or something in which all of the participants of that wing are participating in this program. There are many, many settings that I could list, from homeless shelters to jails, prisons, hospitals, and more, where this TC model has been introduced into what I would call a host setting, where the larger setting has a different mission in terms of either incarceration or as a hospital or whatever, and you can have TC as one component of it, as long as it's a standalone individual unit. So you wouldn't have, two people in one room as a TC and then the next 3 people are not and the other 2 people are. But if you have a segregated part of the facility, you could certainly do that, right?
Good point. Okay, we talked also about community environment. Okay, we have a common place for group activities to take place, and we want to promote a sense of family. You guys came up with a great name for your group, Bandhan, togetherness, bonding, unity. That's what all that means, and that is a core element of a therapeutic community.
And certainly we also talked yesterday about the idea of the learning environment, right? So when Dr. Taylor is talking about posters and displays and things that illustrate the unique message of a therapeutic community, that is all of those recovery-oriented slogans. That's all of the literature that you might have up. You might have a bulletin board with the daily schedule, right? So when we did the parallel yesterday with a classroom that have art, alphabet, students' work, all of that around the environment, a TC is no different. So your TC, when you look at it, that treatment program should look and feel like a treatment program, and that visual aspect of learning is extraordinarily significant. And even to the extent, like if we were doing this multiple days, I would have asked you tomorrow in our morning meeting, besides being on time, I would have said, hey, everybody let's decorate the room. Let's take our philosophy that we were asking people to recite and let's put it on a large piece of paper on the wall, right? Let's put the schedule for the day, let's put that on the wall in big print. Let's use inspirational slogans, both maybe AA and NA style slogans, but others that would be around to create a visual learning environment. So all of your environments that you're running these centers out of should have that aspect of it. I'm interested if they do, and what are some of the things that you have posted?
So you, as administrators, leaders, you need to make sure the environment tells the story and tells the right story, the story that you want told. And also it should be reflective of the welcoming community that you have put forward for people. And also remember what I said, sanctuary. Okay? Sanctuary. It should be a beacon of hope for the people who come in. All right, community activities. We have obviously treatment and educational services which occur in groups and in meetings. and where residents interact with one another, learn from one another. Several group activities. When Seep was talking earlier about tasks in the facility, well, residents come together and prepare meals and serve meals and share meals. And also the jobs are actually performed in teams. So it gives people an opportunity not only to exhibit leadership skills, but also how to work as a member of a team so that we don't have what's called the lone wolf, the lone person, or the isolate. Obviously, we also believe in having ceremonies and rituals, such as birthday celebrations, and also ceremonies that recognize progress.
So as a continuous emphasis when you're operating a TC program, other than maybe your individual counseling that you might have as a standalone activity, really almost all of the activities that are taking place involve the community, involve most or all of the members of the community. They might be separated by phase, separated by job duty. As we talked about, you might have a group that cleans, a group that cooks, a group that is in charge of recreational activities, a group that's in charge of entertainment. Those are all different teams that can be separated, but all of those communities work together. So when we call, as I showed you in the schedule before, for job time, all the people go to their jobs, and whatever the job is that they're doing within that community, you're encouraging that ethic of work and value to the community, right? And that being a transferable thing for when people leave the center. Work and value for work is a significant part of a TC program, and also understanding that when you don't do your work or execute your assignment, that it affects others. We saw that this morning, right? In our meeting, we saw if somebody wasn't there, they couldn't do their part. It caused others to have to do more, right? And people to understand that is a very real life lesson, right?
And they obviously they function as rational authorities and role models, but also as guides, mentors, coaches.
Yes.
Okay, all of the above. That's all required. So another component, peers as role models, and we have talked about that. Correct? All right. And then CPIV has already talked about that each day is structured. There is a time to get up, there's a time for group activities, there's a time for work, there's a time for recreation, the time for meals. So the day is structured. Because we know that folks who have an addictive disorder, they lead very chaotic lives.
Yes.
Their lives are not orderly, they're not disciplined, they don't necessarily do the same thing each day. There is no routine for them.
Yes.
They are very, as I said, disorganized lives, chaotic lives. So what we want to do is create order on an external framework, which will then allow them to have an ability to internalize a way of structuring their days and being able to structure their lives. That's the reason why everything is regimented.
And if you don't do it already, right, we talked about having these handbooks and manuals that you might develop for your program, right? And if you're in charge or you're an administrative person over multiple centers in the RTC approach, you can ensure that each center should have a daily schedule that's adhered to, that talks about what participants do from as early in the morning as they wake up, 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, every half an hour or hour throughout the course of the day until people go to sleep. What time are meals? What time are group activities? What time is it to do your job? When is it recreation? How does the schedule vary on the weekend? If you don't have that, and I got the sense that some centers do and some don't, that should be sort of task number one when you go back tomorrow. Say, okay, let's make our schedule, like we did for the training, by the way, right? We have a schedule for the training, and we tried to stick to it, right? We might have made some modifications. That should be done, should be posted. So when we say as a basic component, that's a really required component that you got to have that morning. Everything should be codified like that.
These also apply to outpatient clinics. You can have recovery slogans and messages in the clinic. You can have an activity sheet that will tell you what you do from day to day. And whether you operate the outpatient program on 3 hours a day or 2 hours a day, at least you will know what the theme of the day is going to be. So yes, it's very important to have external structure, which will guide the process of internalizing structure and discipline. Okay. The other component is stages of the program and phases of treatment. I think that Seep talked to you in some detail about treatment has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that treatment episode is divided into specific phases with developmental stages and learning stages in each phase.
Just like when we were talking a little bit earlier today, that the phases are a fluid process, right? So if you're not progressing with your attitude, behavior, and lifestyle, what happens? No movement. If you're regressing, you should go down in phases. If you're progressing, you should go
Advance.
up. Okay? If you go up and then something happens, you should be able to go back down. Remember that it is not a calendar-driven process, but rather behavior or treatment indicated, one, and then two, that they're both directions. You go forward, you go backward, or just stay in place.
Incremental learning means one builds upon the previous learned experience. It's developmental, it's phased in, it's structured, and because, as I said, you cannot learn to read unless you know the alphabet. So you have to introduce them to the alphabet first. That's incremental learning. So I think we've talked a little bit about work as therapy and education. What do we mean by this? For the residents to own their facility, their program, they must be engaged in the ongoing maintenance of that facility. From making sure the facility is clean, to tending to plants, to dealing with chores, to meals, and to making sure that the common areas are all cleaned as well. So that is really maintaining the facility. And of course, the job assignments will also give them responsibility. As Seep was saying, it's a little different if somebody's a newcomer versus those people who've been in the program a lot longer. So the duration of treatment, the duration of time, will actually be sequenced into progressive levels of responsibility and progressive levels of tasks that are assigned to the individual. The more complex tasks are assigned to folks who've been there for a while.
And there are different aspects of work when we talked about your work assignment, not only in terms of keeping up your bedroom and keeping up the physical plant of the program or the treatment center. You have different aspects that there might be departments that are operating within your center, whether that's education, cooking, laundry, entertainment. There are different ways to look at all of those departments, and all of them can be assignments. You should try to create opportunities within the program for participants to work and contribute to the overall health and functioning of the community. Somebody in charge of the morning meeting, somebody in charge of setting up the chairs, somebody in charge of putting the chairs away, somebody in charge of setting up lunch, putting lunch away, somebody doing the laundry, maybe hanging clothes for drying, deciding about the talent show, singing a song. All of these things are all aspects of work and contribution to the community life.
And you can also have teams of folks that are assigned to a particular area. You can have the landscaping team and put one person in charge. You can have the culinary team and put one person in charge. You can put the recreational activities, social activities, and put one person in charge. And then what you do is, if the person is not doing well, you have to remove them from being in charge, and somebody else gets, and then you rotate people so they get leadership skills, they get team building skills, They learn to work as a team. Repetition. Now that's really key. We want to make sure that the messages of recovery that we're instilling, that runs through all of our activities. In other words, whether it's a seminar or a group meeting, or counseling sessions, we like to reinforce the concepts of recovery on an ongoing basis. Discipline, honesty, trustworthiness. So we want to instill these values, and we do it through every single activity in a day, in a week.
And I think this, even some basic, very small things which seem like they're not a big deal, like when morning meeting we had to keep reminding everybody, we'll say good morning, and everybody says good morning back. And I think I asked somebody, I said, well, you didn't say good morning. They said, well, I already said it. The point is that I'm saying that, there are things that are repetitive that are part of the program. There's no, I already did that yesterday, right? That's not the way it works. We keep doing things again and again and again, and it's a natural part of the flow of the program. Both with concepts that you're learning, but also with other formalities which are repetitive sort of rituals in the program, like good morning in the morning meeting, etc.
So also this morning, Steve and I were wondering how much we should be directive and how much we should just be facilitative and how much we should just let you all do what you needed to do. It was very interesting. And it was very interesting to me how many people came up to me and said, Madam, could we not start immediately? Could we wait a little longer to start because so-and-so isn't here yet and so-and-so is coming, I know, because they call me. Okay, peer encounter groups. Do we know what that means? Peers give each other feedback in a group setting. And these are interactive groups. And these groups offer an opportunity to teach the principles of right living, the principles of recovery. They also allow somebody to feel a sense of unity with another person, bond with somebody else's life story. In the old Greek tradition, they used to take care of common problems by having the entire city community gather and at the theater. And one person would be sharing their story of grief or tragedy, and other people who would be watching the Greek tragedy unfold would themselves start to resonate with the person's pain, and then start offering comfort or feedback and whatever. That process of engaging with another person's feeling, that is in a therapeutic community group. Somebody shares, you give you feedback, and you say, I too have felt this way. Okay. And for staff members, just a little guiding principle. It is very easy to share your feelings without sharing your data. I know, a lot of times people feel that their role as staff keeps them a little separate. Okay, that's fine. You can maintain your professionalism by not sharing facts about your life. Who you're married to, how many kids you have, and so on and so forth. Mother-in-law not being nice, whatever. Those are facts. But you can relate to your clients by sharing your feelings and saying, I too have felt like this in a similar situation. So what are you doing? You're creating connection by sharing feelings and still staying professional by not sharing facts about yourself. Right? Do we get the distinction, people? It is an important distinction because we want to be making sure that our clients understand that we are listening and we're following. That's really critical. It is important that we teach our participants how to provide feedback. That's really critical as well, because we don't want the peers to give negative feedback. And we don't want the feedback to result in power struggles from one peer to the other. Feedback should be just an honest response, open, fluid, and with a great deal of self-honesty, but also honesty in what is being heard. So no manipulation, and no power struggles. That's really, really important. And you as staff are going to have to be the role models to show how feedback is given. Okay? And remember what we always talked about in terms of feedback. We are interested in correcting the behavior and not rejecting the person. I will say that in every training, I don't know how many times. Because a lot of times people forget that what we're trying to do is correct behavior, shape behavior, alter behavior, but not to humiliate or disrespect or disregard or shame the individual. Very, very key. Okay? Awareness training. I think I just already touched on that. I was ahead of myself talking about focus on behavior reshaping and understanding consequences of the decisions that are taken and the actions that result from decisions that are being made. And then, of course, we're looking at emotional growth training, okay? We want them to be able to express their feelings appropriately, learn how to manage their feelings, particularly in stressful situations. When they remember why people use drugs, 2 reasons. Pain or pleasure, basically, pain or pleasure. And for many of them, the initial pleasure becomes extremely painful as they keep going on. Got it? So it may start as a euphoric, experiment, but pretty soon it turns into pain. Right? So we need to make sure that we're dealing with emotional growth training. They need to be able to manage their feelings, particularly in stressful situations. The other component is the actual length of treatment. Now, we cannot tell you that treatment should be of a certain duration. We can tell you what research says, and research says optimum is 90 days plus. But I know that there are programs that are very successful on a 60-day model, and others with 30 days, as long as there is continued support. That is really, really important.
And generally speaking, with this aspect of things, and it really depends individually what your pressures are in terms of how long people stay there, how long if they're in a detox before they came there, do they stay there for some period of time? Is there then outpatient treatment afterward? Do they follow up or aftercare? What is it? What we would generally say to people in our what I would say to my staff is that we want to have contact with the person as long as possible. Right? And as long as that they're willing to engage, as long as the government rules allow us to keep the person, and as long as all these other systems and structures are in place, the actual residential component length can vary. Right? And there's no rule that says you have to be in the program for this number of days or months in order to qualify to be a TC program. But if you're effectuating change in an individual, you should want to have contact with them as long as possible, including if they're done with the program, are there opportunities to come back? Somebody mentioned before that there's volunteers who are done with the program who come back to help run self-help meetings or AA and or NA groups, or they come back for celebrations or talent shows or entertainment activities or other things. So you want to have continued contact with participants, hopefully for many months after they're done with the residential or living in portion of the program.
There are other ways of doing it. Some of you have talked about volunteers. Create an alumni association.
Yes, that's a good idea.
Okay? Create an alumni association. And have at least a place for the alumni to gather and to meet. They're also very good ambassadors for your programs to get money from the government. Okay? So remember that. Your report card is best illustrated by the people that you have treated and served. Okay? That's your report card. How well you do is based on how well they do. We get that notion?
Yes.
Okay. Let's go on to motivation to change. Okay? And I think we have talked about, Steve has talked about this I don't know how many times with you. Okay, positive behavior is modeled and rewarded. Negative behavior is corrected. Okay? The word is corrected. Very simple. Also, we want to make sure that there is enhancement of emotional and psychological state. So residents really will explore feelings, and they will identify their own self-defeating, self-destructive patterns of behavior as they experience personal growth. And then there's an enhancement of intellectual and spiritual life. So they manifest growth by thinking through problems and learning how to make the right decision for themselves, and also to learn new coping skills. What is the single biggest coping skill we have to teach them? Come on, people. Single biggest coping skill. Just say no. What are we saying no to? Hello, thank you, yes. And beyond the saying no to drugs, that's those, psychologically we call them refusal skills, right? But technically speaking, it's that you have to be able to not go back to saying, okay, maybe I could just party on a Saturday night. That's just once a week. No, that's slippery thinking. So we need to teach them how to learn new coping skills. One of the things you can teach them is when you feel that you have an urge to relapse, go to a meeting. Go to an AA meeting, NA meeting. You can't do that, call a buddy and say, hey, come and support me. Create one of these, peer networks. We talked about the Alumni Association. Have them buddy up with one another so that they can say, hey, if you're feeling weak, give me a call. I'll be right there. Those are the kind of things that you can do. I'm telling you, they are not expensive. They're inexpensive ways of getting through and maximizing your resources. And of course, we're looking at improving their work skills and their vocational skills, because we want them to be able to earn a living so that there is something positive in their lives. Okay, so that's really, really important. This is something we don't talk about very often in treatment, but I like to always have people think about emotional healing. That is really, really critical, because our folks, the people we treat, we talk about the fact that they have financial toxicity, pharmacological toxicity, but they also have emotional toxicity and emotional fatigue, right? So we need to give them some emotional healing. And that is, reduction of pain, discomfort, based on the emotions that actually drive them into drug-using patterns. Fear, anger, guilt, confusion, and particularly loneliness. Okay, it's very, very important. So, what do you think emotional healing occurs? I've already talked to you about psychological safety. I've talked to you about physical safety. And what else did we talk about? Sanctuary. Safety, sanctuary. Absolutely. Those are all critical issues, and that's where emotional healing takes place. We create the environment and the vessel, and within it, that's the vehicle that is used for our participants. Right? So this is a very important key in any sort of, in any healing, to be honest with you. Even whether it's a physical illness, it always gets tied to a need for emotional healing. You need to be like parents for the children and the adolescents. You have to be their surrogate parents. It's very, very important. And that's part of the nurturing. It's particularly important for children and adolescents that you're dealing with. Just something I put together as self-change, okay? How do we know we're changing? How do we know people are changing? Well, obviously, the personal habits and attitudes are changing. There's more control and elimination of impulsive behavior. They're able to manage feelings and attitudes, which also demonstrate how well they can handle problems and conflicts in any challenging situations. And then there's self-understanding, connecting past experiences with present behavior patterns, attitudes, and feelings. Do you get the difference of that? we can connect our destructive past experiences with present learning, and as we've learned new behavioral patterns and learned new attitudes and feelings, it's very, very important. Okay? So we'll bring every client participant brings a history of past behaviors and attitudes with them. They learn new behaviors and attitudes, and that's part of self-understanding. They have to understand the difference between the previous persona and the current persona. Internalization. It's the process of practicing what has been learned to new situations and future situations. Also, we have reconfigured the tape in our brains that deals with previous negative thoughts and behavior patterns. Okay, so the tape has been changed. The video is a new one. And then these changes are incorporated in daily activities, and also then the new attitudes and abilities can be applied to new situations. Okay? And new learning takes place. That is internalization. This is when we know, but what we are teaching our clients and our residents, that they have actually not only absorbed the knowledge, practiced it, but they've internalized it. So now they themselves are their own guides and mentors. They can do their own report card. So that process of internalization, you will know it when you see it. Okay? And it's a hard concept to describe, but I've tried to make it as simple as possible. All cognitive behavioral treatment, yeah, you can do that. But mainly, it's whatever you're teaching them every day is two things. You're teaching them to deal with thinking patterns, okay, and to change the negative thinking patterns. So you're disrupting the old tape view of the world and bringing new ones. So that is cognitive. That's cognition. Behavior you're doing in the daily life of a therapeutic community. That is CBT. That's basically CBT. So therapeutic communities do believe in the cognitive behavioral approach. But unlike other CBT curricula, there is a lot more emphasis on the behavior. That's the only difference. And we believe that behavior reshaping for our clients comes first. If we just did cognitive restructuring, they would not exactly be able to incorporate that in daily living. If their lives were not chaotic, it would be different. Our folks, as I keep saying, need habilitation, not rehabilitation. So in order to deal with habilitation, we need to deal with the behavior aspect first. So thank you, Dr. Kumar, for trusting us, for believing in us, and for inviting us, and also for making us feel so very welcome. I hope that you will eagerly participate in not only the training modules, I hope that they will be useful to you in the work that you do, and please give us feedback to see how well you feel that the training has been for your particular work. Thank you so much.